Why is a baker's dozen 13 instead of 12? A baker's dozen, as defined by Google, is a group or set of 13. Some people refer to a baker's dozen as a long dozen or a devil's dozen. What is strange is that a baker's dozen is 13 instead of the standard 12. If you're like me and was wondering why is it like this, in the early days, a baker's dozen was supposed to be a measurement unit, and it was very commonly used. Everyone knows that regularly a dozen is a grouping of 12 items. The number 12 was used because, according to Wikipedia, the most credible source on the internet, the dozen is the earliest primitive grouping because there are approximately a dozen cycles of the moon, or months in a cycle of the sun or year. 12 was used because it was convenient because it has the most divisors of any number under its double. The only numbers that do this are 1, 2, 6, 12, 60, 360, and 2520. But what does this have to do with a baker's dozen? Absolutely nothing, but I thought it was really interesting. But here are some different theories about the baker's dozen. In the United Kingdom, the bakers were obliged to sell goods by the dozen at a specific weight or quality. Apparently, some bakers were cheating some people by giving them less bread units. During this time, bakers who sold a dozen units that failed to meet this requirement could be penalized with a huge fine. The fresh loaves of bread were thought to originate from an old practice of bakers adding a 13th loaf of bread to a batch of 12 loaves to avoid selling underweight bread. As bread was a huge staple in the United Kingdom, they passed laws and rules to reduce dishonesty with harsh punishments. Some included hands being chopped off, and some even involved your ear being nailed down literally. These laws apply to every bakery in the United Kingdom. So if any bakery gave less than a dozen, they would receive a harsh punishment and a fine. Due to these strict rules, bakers started giving out extra bread to ensure they would not provide less than a dozen. So whenever someone walked into the store and decided to buy some loaves of bread, the baker would give them an extra loaf to ensure the weight was more than the minimum. This meant that the bakers gave them 13 loaves instead of 12. So if the person ordered several dozens, the bakers always gave them 13 in the dozen, not 12. Today, it seems very easy for us to buy a loaf of bread from the supermarket, so it seems strange to see how important that extra loaf of bread was for our survival. This wasn't just a weird British thing though. Egypt enacted similar punishments where bakers' ears were cut off and nailed to their bakery door. In the old Babylon, a baker caught selling underweight bread would have his hands chopped off. In the 13th century, a law was even passed regarding the quality and price of loaves of the bread. So, because of the fear instilled in bakers, they always added an extra loaf to avoid the harsh punishments. And because of this is why they're called a baker's dozen. Unfortunately today, if you ask for a dozen at a bakery, the bakers don't give you 13, they give you 12. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Till then, take care, bye.